people will necessarily pop in. This is just on my YouTube, but I was sitting here, and it takes me a while to get to this point. But I'll start by sharing. Um, I usually have to get right in the right moment to make a talk. So it's funny. Wes Spencer told me a long time ago, Matt, do you make your own talk for every single one you do? And I was like, yeah, I make a new talk for everything I do, and I try to keep it fresh. And he's like, man, if you did the same talk like 20 times, you wouldn't capture like the percentage of the populace you wanted to give it to, right? Which I think is funny. And ever since then, I started making like a few talks a year that captured a point or a theme or something that I wanted to educate. And maybe a few is short. Maybe it's like, I bet I had 10 or so different talks last year, let's say, which you'll see some of those pop up here in this. And I figured, there's a lot of people that are starting to speak. There's a lot of people trying to convey a message. I think there's a lot of people out there, and AI makes this a lot easier. I still don't use AI directly. I use AI for a lot of things, but I don't use it to build me a deck. I just don't find that to be my style enough to make that make sense for me. Chime in if you're here, by the way. I'll pay attention over here, but I am just going to get to work on this. But I'm going to share like how I build a deck and how I go through my ideation process as I kind of do this. So first, let me delete the page I just snagged impromptu to make a stream image for this. Really more just to remove the Gemini mark of the stream image I made, because it just annoys me that I can't ask it to do that. It seems, and if I can, just tell me I'm an idiot in the comments, I suppose. But anyways, yeah, so I'm going to delete this. Let's delete this page. I usually build most of my talks in Canva, even if that means I'm going to have to move it over to PowerPoint or something later. The export to PowerPoint's okay. It's not perfect, but all right, delete page. So I walk around with an idea in my head for a long time. I kick it around. Now I kick it around with an AI agent to discuss that and talk about what I want to do and stuff like that. It starts with good morning, DC YouTube 2023. Good morning, buddy. I know who you are. It's great to see you, friend. So I start by kind of like ideating, right? You hear, on Reddit, you see shower thoughts or whatever, but like in my mind, these are my shower thoughts. Like I think about a talk for a long time. I think through like, who's the audience, which is one of the first things that always should matter if you're a speaker, I think, is understand your audience or try to understand your audience. You won't always, I don't think, fully understand the whole, every individual humans kind of where they're coming from. But I think at a conceptual level, you can kind of understand your audience. Like, what kind of businesses are they in? What do they do? Are they end users? Are they technical? Are they owners? What size organization have they been exposed to in their careers in life? Like, what kind of things can they understand from a paradigmatic perspective? Like, what's their viewpoint of how they understand what they're looking at? Then I try to say, like, okay, who am I speaking on behalf of? What am I trying to do? What am I trying to accomplish? Like, is it my friend Darren, and I'm going to help his clients understand a concept that he's trying to get them to understand and ask them to move forward? Or is it to just generally move an audience to a concept? And there's generally some motivation, right? There's something that's driving it. It's just the nature of humanity. Sometimes it's pure education, right? Depends on what you're doing. But for me, it's always around the mission, right? This grow to a central level of standards and then ask that to be the standards. So ultimately, though, I try to ask, who am I helping serve when I do this talk? So those are the first two things I know. Who's my audience and who am I helping to serve? And then after that, it's really just kind of like, what do I want to say? And so the way I build a talk, it kind of can get a little haptic in my brain. One of the tasks I was working on was I like to expose people to the DIKW pyramid. And I was trying to like redo this, but now I'm just killing this one because I found in an older talk that I'd already done this. Now, I don't think I did it well. I did it back here in 2025. I label all my talks like 2025 Investia or whoever. I guess that's probably something. These are all public. Yeah, these are all public. That's fine. Okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't like doxing somebody that doesn't want to say I'm doing stuff for them. God bless me. But anyways, I'd already done this before. But one of the things I think I'd failed at in this talk was when I went into my data information or DIKW, data information, knowledge, wisdom, I had kind of used very weak data points on the bottom. Like poor diet you're having to talk about that's like a relative thing, right? Like it's poor because it is blank, not just data. But whereas heart rate and blood pressure are pretty good. So I'm just taking those same concepts and I'm taking it into this talk in which I where am I doing this? Here. Into this talk where I'm trying to correct that. So now it's like blood pressure, heart rate, weight, 12 minutes exercise weekly, 33,007. Those are all just data points now. They don't have any like feelings about them or thoughts that say like, can't give you anything other than just data. This is just data. So I'm trying to do things like trim that down into just data so that it makes more sense, at least to me. Anyways, but yeah. So when I'm building a talk, I start with those 2 points and then I work towards what my concept is. And this one, it's called From Chatbot to Coworker. The more AI can do for you, the more it can do to you. And I'm going to build my overall hope, and I will change this a bunch between now and next week when I deliver this talk. And yes, that is next week that I'm delivering this, but at least I'm doing it this week, right? Like I feel like I'm being ahead of the game and putting some hours in. I'm at like 6 hours into this, at least on paper, and probably about 10 hours of thinking about it and talking about it with people. But the concept I want to give is like showing people the bottom level of like what you could get out of an AI chatbot that was essentially like, I'll talk to it and it'll give me some knowledge like back, like it'll give me some kind of distilled, at least probabilistic outcome knowledge. That's usually correct. I mean, it does have hyperbolization and has some real just complete makeups. Like, yeah, click here, and you're like, bro, that doesn't exist. And it's like, oh, you're completely correct. That's right. They removed that in 2024, and you're like, anyways. But basically, the benefit of it was that you could help start something. A lot of people are better editors than they are, creators, and all of those kind of things. And then talk about the risk. Well, the risk was generally that you could put in, and I'm summarizing, that you could put in like text that might be sensitive or PII or PHI, and that information could be compromised by proxy of the learning of that or prompt injection or other things that could be involved, especially as you got into more complex situations with RAGs and other things that were retrieval capabilities of data sets. But that was basically your limit, right? Well, now, and then I'll teach the audience about like things like the concept of the rule of two from Facebook. In fact, since we're just talking about it, and I just thought about it, I'm just going to go ahead. And this is unfortunately when my brain works, so I'm sorry you're having to jump into this, but there's one particular image I want out of this article. There we go. So one of the things I also learned from a CISO from a Fortune 100 company that I spoke at was he kind of got on to me because he asked for my citing of, at least these images and screen images that I've grabbed of, stuff to explain. And he said, Matt, if you had just put in all the links, I could go back and read those articles myself, come to my own conjecture. He said, let's make this a lot more scientific, like at least provide the things that you're making your conjectures off of. I'm like, that is a very handy point, friend. And so like in this article here, I cite the actual article. It's obviously for somebody selling this because the end of it is like proper API would have fixed it, which I hate. But the point is I'm trying to showcase that there are these types of things. It was just a great headline. And it did play into actually reality of the way they had laid those open and could have had someone hijack those agents, right? And this is talking about multi by proxy of, I think, Molt bot at the time of the exposure of Molt hub and these other aspects, which I'll talk about in the talk. And I also have in my style, I typically don't put a lot of words in my talk. I typically speak a lot in my talk to allude to the points in the images on the screen. I use the images as a way to keep people captured in their brain thinking about it, and then build the rest of it with words around that. That's typically a style that I employ, I suppose. Any questions? If you're here hanging out, there's a couple people here, I think. One maybe. Anyways. All right, cool. Also, if anybody's in there, tell me how good the noise cancellation coming from Restream is. Because I have a loud fan going over there, and I don't have the studio completely done from an isolation perspective of that outside noise. But I'm curious how well, even without the actual noise cancellation on my hardware side, how well the software side is doing. All right, anyways. Okay, back to the point. I was capturing this page. I think I can just grab this link probably. And notes. I want one particular image. Choose two. Control Shift 4. Okay. And then first off, here. It's terrible. Let's do this a more smarter way. That was bad. It's okay. You can laugh at yourself, right? Oh, goodness. But anyways, yeah, I don't know if anybody wanted to watch me stream creating a talk, but yeah, this is the work that goes into it. A lot of people question like, what it takes to do a talk. Oh, thanks, Darren. So I'm assuming you're saying that it is a very good cancellation. I assume was the correlation there. Okay, so yeah, the Facebook's rule of two, right? This was brought out by Meta, and then referenced by Sunil Yu. I don't like to steal attribution from people that I respect and love. So, oh goodness gracious! So that's the copy operation. You're gonna have to go back in the notes to go get this guy. I want that as source copy. But just the work, and I think AI helps with some of this, but like even then, I can't trust my output enough to say I'm going to send it full send my deck that way. So I just don't. Okay. So like this is an example of a slide that I'll spend maybe 30, 40 seconds on because I'm speaking in this case to an end audience that is not technical. They are SMB owners, executives to that point, and not technical from what I understand. So I'm trying to keep this extremely not technical. So that's why I'm using examples such as like when I'm talking about the DIKW pyramid and I'm saying, data is just raw, unclustered, points, right? Like temperature doesn't mean anything till that's freezing or too hot for you to live, right? Then it has meaning. That's information, right? Like temperatures above 400 degrees will kill humans. Like that's a data point. That's an information point that's been distilled out of data points. Right? Data points of like skin melting, I suppose, if you want to go down that macabre path. But then you get into knowledge. Like knowledge is, let's not in this example, I got it. Like you may have heart issues, or these things lead to heart issues, or you live an unhealthy lifestyle. Those are distilled points out of these data points and information points. I'm gonna have to change the information points. I'm working on that now. Ideating actually myself and Claude, my MVP, or ideating through that, and then I'll build some analogy towards more real life that makes sense around that, like that I can make better fishing, right? So if you think about this, if like, okay, if I have data that I have Matt Lee on Facebook and at Midwest Motorcycle Rally Society or whatever, and then I also have information from that the Midwest Rally Society is sponsored by Midwest Motorcycle Supply, and then it's on such and such date, and that Matt will be going to that because he said he's going to it on Facebook. Now I have the ability to take that knowledge that Matt's going to be at this thing, and that Midwest Motorcycle Supply is a trusted source, and I can send well-targeted phishing to that human from that. So it's an example of how AI enhances the attack speed and quality and scale by all of those metrics, in my opinion, just from AI living in the knowledge layer. Now, humans, I think, alone live in the wisdom layer, in my opinion, something we uniquely still hold. But that's, I guess, maybe one more mountain to climb. I digress. But anyways, this is an example of one of the concepts I want to teach without getting technical, right? So I'll start with AI lives in the knowledge layer and the DIKW pyramid. As you go up the pyramid, things get more contextualized, like relative to each other or interdependent in mysterious and sometimes emergent ways. And then complexity increases, right? And that they're getting more data points, we're getting more information that's distilled from other information and data points and the scientific process and all the things that distill to knowledge, if you want to take it that way. And so that's where, at least chatbots from the very beginning have kind of lived-ish in the knowledge layer, certainly they have lots of information, certainly in the probabilistic things that should be outcomes from knowledge, as long as the data is good. And this goes back to garbage in, garbage out, right? Data and information in or out. Yeah, depends on the human. Sure. I think back to, I don't know. I don't remember the context, my friend. Sorry. But yeah. So trying to go through those points and explain that. And then the other piece that I want to explain again that I just captured was the rule of two. Again, first shown by to me by Sunil. And DIKW actually came from, at least from Sunil conceptually, in a talk that he and I did together, that we brought him in to be an expert. So that was kind of cool. But anyways, the rule of two kind of says, like, if I'm dealing with back to the very beginning, because I've drifted. So the beginning of this talk is explaining the chatbot and the risks the chatbot explains. And then I'm going to explain kind of the change that LLMs or AI, generative AI, have allowed us to take robotic process automation, like the ability to take this process and say, run a script, do a chat with a human, talk to them about their airline process, and then, talk to them about the refund process for bereavement, all of those things. And then as an outcome, deterministically do these things, give refund, don't, whatever it might be, right to that thing. And so what the LLM allowed us to do, and I'll explain, and I'll try to do this with slides, is the LLM allowed us to take non-deterministic kind of capabilities to our advantage, to say, like, it doesn't always have to be perfect. I can ask it to make a decision, put it in one of these 4 buckets: refund, don't refund, say goodbye, thank you very much, please call this, whatever. And so it allows me to have something in between that kind of gets to be the quote unquote brains. I don't mean that to say sentience, but like the brains of it. Anyways, and then now output. So when I think of like automation flows, and I'll show a picture of an N8N out of another talk I've already done, and show that creation. In fact, let's just do it. I actually need this right now. This is the one I want. I actually can reuse several of these slides. Oh, this is a fun talk. All right. That's how I said it last time, so I'll say it this way this time too. I may co-opt. Nah, I don't want to go that deep into it this time, so probably won't, because I only have 45 minutes and I want to get into other topics. All right. So this one, oh, the animations don't come over. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I will go through that. So anyways, the point is I'm going to talk about how it's related, and I've got another 20 hours of ideation to go through on this before I'm done. But I want to talk about how once you make it now an agent that can do stuff that is limited what it can do, then anywhere you expose attack surface within that, you have some attacks that could be a real problem that's more than it used to be, right? When it used to just be me putting data in a bot and it being able to extract data from the bot, the damage and attack surface was kind of limited. Now when it's running into these API outcomes, including potentially even this not hacking side, but when the gentleman, and that's probably what I'll do. Yeah, I'll just find that. When the gentleman found, I think, asked for a ticket back because of bereavement, but it didn't really meet the bereavement policy, but he convinced the chatbot he did. and the chatbot gave it, the courts upheld that that was a valid refund, that they had, as an agent of their world, said yes to the refund. So I want to find that article to explain, like, now you're in this problem where you expose this chatbot to do stuff for you, and that brings us into the rule of two. You have these new problems, and first one is like you have to deal with any of these, and any two of these are in real danger, and then all three is just really, really bad. I would actually argue you try to do one, filtering the other, but that is process untrustworthy inputs. Let anybody just touch the stuff, right? Anybody can just do the stuff. That's basically like if you have a ticket system like a PSA. I've gone through this in another example. Like a ticket system like a PSA, and I allow my chatbot to interact with that ticket system to, let's say, enrich the PSA with data from, my documentation process or from other things that you expose it to. Well, now I've exposed sensitive systems, potentially like data from my configuration data that might have data about security protection, what kind of tools, how they're configured, things of that nature could be considered sensitive. I'm not saying it isn't necessarily, but you could argue that in the comments, which way you think. But access to systems or private data, now you're getting into like private company information about the humans involved in the PSA directly. So A and B probably exist together. And then now if you allow it to change state, well, what could change state mean in this context? Well, allowing someone to put ticket notes in as through an AI agent that allows that human to do something that you want them to do down the chain maliciously, right? So it could be something where you're trying to inject bad things into or exfil things out of, right? So anytime you allow it to communicate externally, the bot itself, or allow it to change state, that's when they're saying now you get into some real unmanageable risk. And they go into how it stops exploitation. Agent may not only process emails from untrustworthy senders, such as close friends, preventing the initial prompt injection payload from ever reaching the agent's context window. So like when you use rule of two, when you put in things to prevent some of those things, like can't read the agent's private inbox or can't do, so you have to think about like really trimming the permissions that you give it. Anyways, probably won't get that deep into the conversation and find a better way to say it to an audience that is not technical. But anyways, so, and then the third phase is this problem on steroids. And that's the kind of concept we're seeing now with the, Claude Cowork to some extent, much better on guardrails and protections there, but certainly in the Claude bot. And that's what I'm going to get into kind of, and these changed. I already changed how I'm going to do this. It's more like, the beginning, inner chat. I'm still going to leave that the intern. I think it's appropriate. But anyways, the intern to conceptualize the kind of chat bot that's hanging with you. You kind of made an agent in Copilot or an agent, and this thing gives it a prompt, and you ask that prompt to make it something it can do. So now when you feed it a text and ask it to say it in the voice of John Smith or Bill Smith or whoever, I guess there's a lot of Smiths, but then it does that. Those are the kind of things I'm talking about where I'm like the intern. You can give it a specific task. You can make it do something. You can make it read your email. You can make it do things. That's the intern. That's also, in my mind, kind of the phase that people more resonate with, that it ties to that kind of automation process. The intern can also be a series of N8N or Power BI or Power Apps type flows that allow you to have more capabilities that start getting towards that kind of N8N picture I'm going to flow. But then you get into like this, the coworker, right? I just give my multi-bot. And then what I plan to do for this, which is fun, and I don't know if I can share this in a way that's sensitive, but I've built a bot called Multi that I've been interacting with. That is a Claude bot from the early days, CLAWD bot, and I've been interacting with it for the last 60 days or so, 70 days. And anyways, and it just showing and asking periodically, which I'll capture out of Discord and put into this live stream, captured periodically asking, what do you know about me? And then I'll have to redact that in this talk, so I won't stream for much longer anyway. But so ask it, what do you know about me? And then it's kind of eye-opening how much it kind of shows you that it actually does know about you over time. I mean, it being not sentient, obviously, or alive, but just a series of scripts wrapped around an LLM response capability. So, but it's intriguing how quickly it brings up contextually relevant things that were from 13, 14 days ago One instance was I had a stink bug challenge in my new home that I've acquired, and it called it the Stink Bug Palace after that, in reference from there on out. So it's just interesting that it would bring that back up a lot later, a lot of context window later. So obviously, just from the memory that it has in its database, and Ash Cooper does a great job explaining a lot of that, and I think she's doing that for the ISAL this week at some point. So you should join that. All right. Well, I'm not going to stream forever. I'm going to get back to work where I can just focus on actually creating. So I'm going to stop talking for a bit and just kind of stream and mess around. If you have any questions, please pop in, and then I'll end the stream here in about 10 minutes probably. Well, I'm gonna stop streaming and get to work. See y'all.